Good afternoon, BioMariners. Welcome to the Genetics and Selective Breeding panel discussion. I'm your host, Donald Fowler. I work for the Scottish Aquaculture Innovation Centre, and our role is to solve near-market industry problems, utilising leading research from our universities in Scotland and putting them together with industry to solve industry problems. We don't just work exclusively in Scotland. We reach out internationally, and we have collaboration agreements with NOFIMA here in Norway and also with the Cawthorn Institute in New Zealand. And the type of projects that we fund are quite diverse, but they include things like cleaner fish, rapid diagnostics and genetics, and that will allow our indigenous industry to expand and grow sustainably and create jobs. So I'm an innovation manager with SAKE. I have 20 years experience in aquaculture. I have a science background, but I'm a generalist. My colleague Jason Cleaversmith is also here. So we're all about innovation, so come and speak to us and reach out to us during the convention, please. Which brings me to introduce our panel members. Sitting next to me is what I call the old man in the sea. I hope he's not offended by that, and I mean it in the best possible way by the breadth of his experience. He's a veterinarian by background, professor of genetics and immunology. He's worked in Scotland, California, and Norway. He's founded Genomar. He founded the MariLife Innovation Network. He was an initiator of the Global Marine Investment Fund, Holberg Triton. He's published research papers. He's collaborated on national and international projects. He also holds board memberships and chairmanships in several biotech companies. He was the Dean of the Faculty of Veterinary and Medical Biosciences at NBMU. He says he's stepped down from that, but he has lots of plans for other opportunities, so that's Øystein. Sitting next to Øystein is Nina Santi. You've met her already briefly. She's also a veterinarian and holds a doctoral degree in fish biology. She was associate professor at the veterinary school. She worked at Aquagen since 2007, and she's held several positions as technical director, quality, and fish health manager. She's also been the head of R&D and head of breeding programs. And within the period Nina's worked for Aquagen, they've developed rapidly and have reinforced their position as a leading global aquaculture breeding company. And our final panel member, but not least, is the managing director of Samobreed AS in Norway. It's part of the Benchmark Group from the UK. And together with Stoffen Fiskur in Iceland, they're the second largest provider of salmon genetics in the world. And Jan Emil has been working in the salmon industry for more than 30 years, and he has experience in farming, processing, and genetics. So thank you. So I'd just like to pass over to my panel members and just say what's leading in the fields that they're working on at the moment in selective breeding. And Nina, do you want to go first?
Yes. For us, we work in parallel with two main topics. One thing is to help the industry in ways of improving the sustainability of the industry. The salmon industry in Norway today has limited growth because it needs to address two major challenges, which are SKPs that can mix with the wild salmon, and the second one is sea lice. So we want to try help this by working on production of sterile salmon and also by selecting for sea lice resistance. The second part is also about the customers, the fish farmers. We work on how to help them in their value creation. We see that genetics, as has been seen before in history, has a huge potential to improve the efficiency of production, both by disease resistance, improved growth, better feed quality.
Mm-hmm. Good. Øystein, do you want to say about what you're interested in at the moment?
My faculty of the NMBU is involved in a series of approaches and efforts in genetic enhancement in farm animals, livestock and fish, and addressing all most important sort of challenges there is and opportunities and potentials in advancing the broodstocks, both in salmon and also in quite a few other species worldwide, in tight collaboration with NOFIMA and the commercial sector.
Good. Yeah.
Yeah, what I find very interesting with this convention, and which also corresponds very well with the strategy of my company, Benchmark, is that we have a cross technology view on things. We don't think that breeding and genetics can solve all the issues and all the problems in the fish farming industry. So Benchmark is also involved with animal health and advanced nutrition. So I think that has been raised by several other speakers earlier this morning. And the second is that we are, even if I represent salmon breed in Norway and we are salmon breeders, we also have activities within tilapia in the United States, in Latin America, and we are involved with shrimp breeding in Colombia, in South America. So we also already into other species, even if salmon is by far the largest and maybe most advanced in terms of breeding at the moment.
Sure, thank you. That gives you a round of the broad range of experience we have on the panel, so I'd like to move on to some more formal questions. And the whole theme of BioMarine is efficient use of resources, both biological and economic. So in other animal sectors, selective breeding has been used to great advantage, particularly in the growth and efficiency of production of chickens, pigs, cattle, making enormous gains and changing those markets. Do you think, Nina, that the same sort of gains we've seen in other animals are being made and can continue to be made in the production of salmon?
Yes, definitely. One of the things about salmon breeding is that it has quite a long generation interval. So by now we are only working on the 12th generation of Atlantic salmon, whereas all the other animals, farmed animals, have been bred for many, many more generations. So there's a lot to gain in Atlantic salmon breeding still. But we also have a lot to learn, I think, from the other species that has been under selective breeding for a longer time period. I think one of the really interesting thing about chicken breeding or broiler breeding is that they have gained a lot on growth, but at the moment growth is not the main focus. The main focus is feed efficiency, and by working on feed efficiency, they for this really big industry, they are really working on the sustainability of the industry too, because the field or acres they need to grow the feed for the same amount of chicken is always been reduced. And other things to learn is also to keep focusing on animal welfare in the work we do. That's really important.
You said salmon's only recently been domesticated, but the genome's recently been sequenced. And is there enough variation in the salmon genome in the population to allow for large breeding gains? And are the current breeding programs that are selecting for broad or narrow goals, long or short-term goals? I guess, summary, what my question is what is the ideal breeding goal? Øystein, do you want to lead with that?
Well, in my view, the ideal breeding goal is quite diverse. You need to have a very robust breeding goal. You cannot just address a single sort of strategy or trait, because that will, in the long run, give some adverse effects. So a combined, robust, holistic approach to take into account all major industrial important traits, but also traits related to welfare, to disease resistance. That we have long-standing experience there in livestock and achieved a lot. So when you are talking about genetic gains in livestock and also potential side effects, we should also take into account that we have had quite substantial genetic gains also in disease resistance. For instance, in the Norwegian cattle, we have had several, for decades, been selecting for improved disease to a variety of diseases. The same for salmon. So, and back to how long you can go on. The diversity in the population, that is the main thing, not in the genome, but in the population. That is the basis for genetic gain. And the Atlantic salmon, several places, especially here in Norway, we started a founder population. I think it was based on 40 or 50 strains, river strains. So you could go on for almost ever here.
Jan, have you anything to add to that?
No, I think it's as Nina said, we are very new in this game compared with chicken and pigs and cattle. So I think we have achieved a lot over the last 40 years. And even if we have had a broad breeding goal, as Øystein says, and I think that has been one of the successes for the Norwegian salmon, that we didn't only focus on growth or only on one or a few traits. But in spite of that, we have had a very, I mean, we have a very good record, and we, in these generations, for salmon with only 8 generations, we have achieved a lot, both on growth and disease resistance.
I think also just applying classical tools, you achieved a lot by including disease resistance. You tested for viruses, bacteria, whatever. But now with the new molecular tools, you also advance this with new power.
And there's also another effect of the new technology, and that is that we can keep the broad breeding goals in the nucleuses. We can keep the variation, and still we can make very tailor-made selections for the individual farmer. And this is really new opportunities.
And you know, how are modern genomics advances changing that game? I mean, you hear a lot of these acronyms like QTL, SMP, CRISPR, and selection's been done for things like pancreas disease resistance, IPN, and mucosal immunity against sea lice, with some success, I have to say. So how are these tools changing the game for you? Jan?
I think it is, as you say, it's new tools. We have in the bottom, we have a traditional family breeding program, and that will continue. But then we have new tools coming in from genomics. We had the QTLs, we have genomic selection. In the future, we will have to discuss gene editing. So it is. It's not starting from scratch with new technologies. It is based on what we already do, and I think that will continue.
So you're not throwing out the old molecular methods and adapting these wholesale. Is that what's happening now?
If you are looking at the whole tool pack available for genetic enhancement, it's fantastic. It's fascinating, and I like also the new development also pointed out by the Argentina minister here, the CRISPR. Although I'm not very I don't fancy too much the GMO thing, but I'm also quite open. I'm not a fundamentalist. As long as you take into account and address animal welfare, cost efficiency, environmental impact, and do this in a good way, then you could be open to almost anything. But that is very important. And I would claim that genetic enhancement is maybe the most powerful tool you have in the whole value chain, in all bioproduction, because it's addressing almost any industrial traits, not just the live part, with managing the live delicate part with disease resistance or the controlling management, feed, traceability, then over to the post-harvest, addressing almost all traits there with color and texture and complexion, whatever. So I think long before you had the molecular tools, it was the most powerful tool. But for the future, I think we should also address the potential untapped synergy between the different measures here. Breeding, vaccinology, diagnostics, feed, nutrition science, so we can really dig into new opportunities to optimize all the management regimes around the target animal.
That's a good point. And just carrying on from that, I hear lots about mathematical modeling approaches to salmon and in silico salmon or digi salmon. And in fact, we here, well, in SAIC, we are funding a project related to this on a simulated gut model for salmon with a contribution from our colleagues in NOFIMA. I mean, is this sort of big data mathematical approach, is it going to be vitally important in the future of selective breeding?
At least it makes sense to employ the most powerful computer science because you are dealing with big data. Mm-hmm. And if you have a systemic approach, systems biology approach to the salmon or the fish, then you are not dealing like the classical way. You dealt mostly with the segments of the processes. Mm. Here you are sort of addressing the whole ecosystem of signaling or metabolic pathways of physiology of the individual. And then even addressing the microbial community in the gut and around. And how the heck could you address all this with the most powerful computer science? Mm-hmm. So this hybridization or marriage between top modeling power with the systemic approach to the biology, that is what they call actually with buzzword the digital fish, digi-salmon or whatever. Yeah. It's a little bit buzzword, but there is substance in it. Mm-hmm. And I think it could add some value also to the breeding. Mm-hmm.
Just a comment. I think it's all about understanding the biology, which is the fundamentals of all about what we do in aquaculture. And this is an opportunity to bring together different sciences and big data sets from different sources and try to get a new understanding. So I think it will be vital in the future, but still need some development before it's really readily available to anybody to understand.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
We are breeders. I mean, we are breeding companies, so we don't want to be perceived as people walking around in white coats in laboratories, because we are using the technology, but the basic work is still taking place out in the field, in the cages, or in the broodstock plants.
Sure. Just jumping back to GM. I mean, does GM salmon have a place in the market, Jan?
I don't think so. It was very interesting to listen to the Argentinian minister talking about the soy production in Argentina. So I'm not sure if there is any media here, but 99% GM soya. That would be a good headline in the Norwegian newspapers. And for salmon, it would be a catastrophe because the market is not willing to accept GMO salmon. And I think we have achieved a lot with traditional breeding programs, and we are now adding genomics, which will further increase the gain. And even, as I said before, that will be always in the bottom, even if there are new technologies coming. And of course, there is a new technology in gene editing, which is now very much in question. And it can be applied. At the moment, it is considered GMO, but we have to, as serious breeding companies, we have to look at all new technologies and evaluate what we can implement in our programs. Mm-hmm. But I don't believe in the GMO salmon that we all know from North America.
Yeah. I mean, the market decides, and coming to that, in Scotland, there are some companies looking at selecting specifically Scottish salmon strains more suited to Scottish conditions, but for marketing reasons and differentiation. And I know that, for instance, in shellfish in New Zealand, they're actively selecting Pacific oysters for shell shape and meat presentation and shell color and things. So does that mean that we're looking at a future market for differentiated seafood production? Nina, do you want?
If you refer to the differentiation in Scotland, they use the same brands as in Norway today, and we have done a lot of studies over the years to look at, for instance, growth of the salmon in different environments to see if there's any difference. And for the most of the traits, we see the same distribution of families that grow well in under different environments. But for marketing purposes, there may be that the farmers want to differentiate, and you can also contribute to this by selective breeding, like I said, to make tailor-made genetics for certain farmers. They want to focus on feeder color, for instance, or any other traits. That's possible with the new technologies.
Okay.
I think I mean, cost-wise, Nina and myself, we know exactly how much it costs to run a full family breeding program with everything. So to do that for a small volume in Scotland or wherever, because you need a big variety to breed on, and so I believe we can solve it by genomics, by using special fish tailor-made for a special market.
Well,
But I don't think all farmers will start their own breeding program.
okay, can you widen that out a bit? We heard a lot about protein shortages earlier today, and we live in a global aquaculture world, and there's a predicted shortage of protein, particularly in less developed countries. So where do you think the biggest gains are to be made in other species, particularly relevant to those less developed countries? Is it in tilapia? I know both of you have got interest in tilapia, so Nina, you go first, and then we'll pass it to Jan.
I think breeding can be of importance to any food production. Is it plants or animals or fish aquaculture species? I think that to invest in breeding, when you start up a new species, you could start by conventional family breeding, and as you move on, either to produce a premium product where you get good revenues back, or if you have some volume, it's also wise to invest in genomics. The gains come back very fast from genetics. So it is, I think, worthwhile in any food production to look into genetics.
Jan?
Yeah, I agree. But I also like to add that it's not only to develop breeding programs and introducing tools like genomics, but it has to be linked to industrial production of the species. I mean, we have the history in Norway about the cod farming, which was, I think, it was before my time in the breeding business. But I think from the breeding point of view, it worked fine with families. But it didn't work in the production in the sea. So I think when we have both invested in tilapia, and Benchmark is also into shrimp breeding. So definitely there will be more species, and what we have achieved in salmon is achievable for other species.
Excellent. That's good news. And moving on to those new markets and differentiation into new species, protecting intellectual property is obviously an important issue, and I believe it's not an issue in Northern European aquaculture, but it could be an issue in developing countries, because the international framework regulations, the UPOV, seem to date from the 60s. So, Øystein, is this an issue? Do you need a new regulatory framework?
I met this challenge when I was a founder in the breeding enterprise Genoma Tilapia, that the investors were not very keen, or they were a little bit hesitating. How can you protect your genetic gain? Mm-hmm. There are a few free riders out there, copying potentially the fish can breed, etc., etc. So how do you cope with that? Well, there are quite a few instruments already in business. Like genetic traceability, for instance, is a very interesting side product from genomics. So since you have a unique broodstock, it will give an imprint to the whole value chain, and you can trace back and say this is mine or not mine. Combined then with good contracts or legal framework, even sterile fish or narrow lines or isogenic hybrids, actually, where you have a breakdown. I think it's fair to claim that the farmer should stick to his business and the breeder to his business. If the farmer is taking advantage of the breeder, copying and developing, so then he is in breach. And then you have a traceability instrument. But we don't have the instrument they have in plant breeding. There they have an international convention protecting plant, and all those countries ratifying. They are using this as also as a legal instrument to point at if there are any players in breach of taking advantage of as a free rider, because it takes a lot of effort and work and investment and capital to develop a very advanced broodstock. So maybe a UPOV for fish and animals is something we could. Maybe this is some task for BioMarine, Pierre. I don't know. I have addressed a few lawyers about this, but they are not too keen on. Maybe there are a lot of politics here, because there is also something called farmers' privilege. So,
Is that an issue you've come across in the development of tilapia, Jan?
I guess we are both relatively new in tilapia, but of course it is an issue. But as Øystein says, I mean, first of all, as breeders, we just have to be so good that the farmers would like to have the newest newest eggs or juvenile, newest genetics every year when he needs a new supply of genetic material, and there are also ways of protecting. If you go back in the salmon industry 40 years, a lot of farmers had their own strain caught from the local rivers, and you don't find that anymore. So it is a natural development, I think.
yeah.
We will do our job to prove that they should buy from us.
You are professionalizing the whole business.
Yeah.
They stick to their own, yeah.
But I think this is an issue, and this is particularly an issue when moving into new markets, where you don't know all the regulations, and to have an international framework there on how this works, it would be really good.
Thank you. I think that's us at the end of our section. That's past. We're keeping you all from lunch, but I'd like to thank the panel very much for their valuable contributions. Thank you very much, everyone. And we don't keep you from your lunch. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.